y'all. I'm Jamie Lynn Sigler, a mom, actor, and advocate. I know how overwhelming it can be trying to decide which treatment is right for you. I've been there. But you should know you're not alone. You can do this. Start with some research, talk to the community, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions. You might find results that speak for themselves. That's how I landed on Kesimpta. Ask your doctor if Kesimpta, ofatumumab, could be right for you. You can check out the details at kesimpta.com.
So good, so good, so good.
Great gifts for mom? We've got them. And they're up to 60% off at Nordstrom Rack stores now.
You know they have Marc Jacobs?
Gotta show mom some love.
That is so good.
Snag amazing deals on Mother's Day gifts from Barefoot Dreams, Kate Spade New York, and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse on your favorite streaming platforms. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. And now, you can find the Red Treehouse on Patreon. Join the Red Treehouse community for as little as $3 per month and receive exclusive member benefits. Simply go to patreon.com/Red Treehouse. Important note: sources for this episode can be found in the show notes. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. In this episode of The Red Treehouse, I'm going to read you an original short horror story by WH Vigo. Vigo completed the Horror Writers Association Mentorship Program for new writers in 2021. Since then, Vigo's short stories have been published in multiple horror and dark fantasy anthologies. Their novella, Beneath the Rio Cobre, was published in 2023. It is my privilege to narrate Beneath the Rio Cobre, a story that is guaranteed to keep you up at night. So sit back, turn down the lights, pull up the covers, and pay close attention as I read Beneath the Rio Cobre by WH Vigo. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. Chapter 6. Archibald woke up groggy, his head aching. He had stayed up late into the night writing his report to the police. Usually this was easy, but the strange scale and Mr. Reed's gray and blue face caused his mind to buckle through the process of conveying a message based in logic. Supposedly, Chambers' wild grunting and Sarah's moans also kept him from rest. Archibald stepped out of his tent to an empty campsite, except for Sterling sitting by a small fire, sipping from a mug. "Where is everyone?" he asked, looking about confusedly. "Gone to do some observations. We're going upstream this evening, by Flat Bridge. Are you ready to go to the police station, Mr. Grant?" "Yes, but what about the woman?" Sterling shrugged a shoulder. She already left. Archibald slid his hands into his pockets and planted his legs in a wide stance. "Tell me, what exactly is Chambers hunting?" "He said you'd ask me that, and he told me to say you'll see." "But you know what it is, don't you?" Sterling snorted, then shook his head. All I know is that this job feeds my family." The drive was silent again, the men only exchanging a few words here and there in English. "Shouldn't we have gone to the police station by now?" Archibald asked. "I feel like we might have passed through this area already." He pointed out the window at a field. "That looks like the same flock of goats from earlier. Are we lost?" "We'll get there," Sterling deadpanned. Archibald stared out the car window until the embankment of the Rio reeled into view. As they drove closer, he saw Catherine in some bushes by the roadside with a judgmental stare. Beside her, a pale woman with wet dark hair, her naked back turned to the road. Catherine pointed an accusing finger directly at Archibald. "Ugh, there's that fruit-selling girl again," he grumbled, rubbing an itch from his eye. "Living like some mad pygmy in the bushes with some other mad woman. Hopefully she's staying out of trouble." Nearing Flat Bridge, villagers were once again scattered about its shores. Archibald gasped. "My God, was there another drowning?" he cried. "Stop the car, I need to get out." Sterling pressed hard on the gas. "Hey, what's wrong with you? Stop!" Archibald shouted. Sterling didn't even blink. A plump woman suddenly ran into the road, then froze, her face gray with fear. Sterling stomped on the brakes, and the men lurched in their seats. Archibald looked ahead. "Marcia! That's Marcia!" he exclaimed, climbing out of the car. Archibald ran up to her and pulled her away from the road. Marcia's eyes wide and empty as the moon, and she breathed in hurried gasps. "What's happening?" Archibald asked, shaking her arm. "Who drowned?" Marcia jumped as though she'd been slapped. I heard it's some half-caste girl. They said she looks like a white woman." Dread slashed through Archibald's thoughts, and his blood ran cold. "And they say there's a dead cow on Flat Bridge," Marcia continued. "And that the Obi is dead, too." "That can't be. I just saw Catherine a moment ago," Archibald said. "I'm coming with you." He followed Marcia along the riverbank toward Flat Bridge. Mud squelched beneath their feet, and warm rain pattered their shoulders. Pressing through the gathering crowd, they saw Stanmitz, shirtless and waving his arms, hollering at people to keep their distance. Ruth glowered at him, arms crossed. "No, don't come. Don't look," Stanmitz pleaded. "What are you hiding?" Ruth demanded. "We heard what happened. Get out of the way. Let us see." Archibald stepped forward. "Stanmitz, what on earth is going on?" Stanmitz looked at him with sagging eyes, heavy with sadness. "Mr. Grant, you need to put this in your letter to the police." Thunder clapped, and the rain began to fall in earnest. Marcia rushed to Stanmitz's side, clapping and shouting at the crowd to keep their distance. "I'll keep them back," she said. "You two go on." Stanmitz led Archibald down the embankment to a naked female body laying by the riverside. A soaked tan shirt laid across its face, giving it a clay-like appearance as an outline of its features seeped through. A pointed nose and wide-open mouth filling with rainwater. "This is very terrible," Stanmitz said mournfully. "Another one from the locker this morning." He crouched down and moved the shirt aside. Sarah lay beneath, her blank face tangled with mud and seaweed, raw terror in her eyes as though she'd been trapped on a sinking ship. A deep gash split her throat from ear to ear, and a water beetle wriggled out of the wound. Archibald gasped and recoiled from the scene, slipping on the wet grass. Stanmitz grabbed his arm, and the solicitor regained his balance. A woman screamed, and the men jumped. Ruth had been standing behind them. "Lord God," she wailed. "Who did this? Murder! Stop! Enough!" Archibald barked. "You'll cause a panic." Ruth chewed her lips, then went quiet. Stanmitz raised an eyebrow. Do you know this woman, Mr. Grant? Fear and apprehension clawed through Archibald's chest. His breathing quickened, and dizziness churned his thoughts into a blur. What should he say? If he said he knew Sarah, that she had been at Chambers' camp with him and 3 other men the night before, suspicion would erupt and burn away any semblance of the discretion he'd promised. The right thing to do would be reporting the incident to the police and having them visit the camp. But what if he was lumped in with the whole thing and suspected of murder too? He had no evidence, and Chambers was wealthy enough to hire an army of the finest lawyers. The investigation alone would collapse his reputation, and he and his family would be criminalized and ostracized from society. No, he wasn't going to subject himself, his business, or his family to such humiliation over some feckless streetwalker. He looked at Stanmitz. I don't know who she is. Ugh. Archibald slapped a hand over his face. A strange pain dug through his left eye, like a tiny finger fiddling its way through his eye socket, then burrowing into his skull. He massaged at it, then wiped away a glob of green mucus, its stench reminding him of old fish. You all right? Stanmitz asked. I'm fine. I'll notify the police as soon as I leave here. Where's Catherine? Stanmitz took a deep breath. Closer to the bridge.
Hey all, I'm Jamie Lynn Sigler, a mom, actor, and advocate. I know how overwhelming it can be trying to decide which treatment is right for you. I've been there. But you should know you're not alone. You can do this. Start with some research, talk to the community, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions. You might find results that speak for themselves. That's how I landed on Kesimpta. Ask your doctor if Kesimpta, ofatumumab, could be right for you. You can check out the details at kesimpta.com.
Chapter 7. The men walked toward Flat Bridge as the rain poured down, Marcia following a few steps behind. The water beneath Flat Bridge flowed dark and thick as sewer sludge and reeked of rotting eggs. As the trio neared the underpass, Stanmitz pointed to a pile of clothes laying several feet away, the white headscarf and checkered dress filthy, laying in the mud like a balled-up python. There she is, he said. One of the fishermen said that right before sunrise, he saw her walking into the river naked, crying. Poor girl. Archibald squinted. That can't be. I saw Catherine by the roadside not long ago. Really? I doubt it, but let's hope. Now look up top. Archibald craned his neck upwards and saw a cow's face staring back at him, its neck dangling over the edge of the bridge, tongue hanging from its mouth. Somebody broke its neck. Ruth clasped her hands over her mouth and backed away, trembling. She turned and ran. Stanmitz shook his head. Something very wrong is happening here. First woman I pulled from the locker with her throat cut. But the ritual, it's backwards. Somebody wants to provoke River Mama. What do you mean by it's backwards? Archibald asked. My great-grandmother was an Obi, a good one. Helped people, cured them of sickness and infertility. She said that in the old ways, some people sacrificed cows to appease spirits. They would slice the cow's neck, but one must never break it. Maybe someone helped Catherine do it. She couldn't have done it herself with those skinny arms. No, Mr. Grant. Catherine knew better. Remember, she had a knife when she said we must kill the cow, but she left the village alone. Maybe someone stole it from her. Now one next woman dead, which River Mama hate to see. And the cow. Stanmitz clicked his tongue. Well, he just waste. So you think some lunatic sacrificed the woman you found, instead of the cow, to provoke whatever creature? Human sacrifice is a wicked thing, Mr. Grant, and our ancestors did not practice it. But human nature is an even wickeder thing. And if you ask me, that's the root of our problem. Archibald bowed his head. Yes, I agree. The men returned to the slope where Sarah's body was found, only to find empty mud. The crowd had already dispersed except for Marcia on the riverbank, her eyes hunting through the water. Ruth stood alone under a tree, bawling softly into her hands. Stanmitz blinked. Where did the woman go? He scowled, then turned to Ruth. What are you crying for? Where'd the lady go? Marcia shook her head. Some children came to look, and by the time I'd gotten them away from the Rio and came back, she was gone. Did they see anything? Archibald asked. No, I made sure they didn't, Marcia replied. Ruth sniffled and looked at them through swollen black eyes. One of her lips split and bleeding. I don't know where the woman went. She disappeared. Disappeared, Stanmitz echoed. You know how heavy one dead body is? It can't move just so. Well, she's gone, Ruth countered. Maybe washed away. And everybody else who came to see, they called me a liar and beat me. Serves you right, Marcia said. It was you who cast the first stone. Ruth huffed and stormed away. Archibald took a deep breath, relieved that the crowd and squabbling woman had gone. Based on how strong the current is, I think the body was likely swept away by the water, he stated. I'll be heading to the police station now. You two should get out of the rain. Marcia hugged herself tightly, as though she were trying to keep from falling apart. Mr. Grant, can I ask you a favor before you go? She asked. Of course. What is it? The woman swallowed hard, then stared into his eyes. Don't just go to the police. They were already out here when Mr. Reed and his grandbaby drowned, and even the week before that when another outsider woman was found. All they did was gawk. Then they left without a word. Please take a copy of your report to the governor. Can you do that for us? The police might sit on their hands again, but he'll do something. Archibald paused and looked at the Rio, haunted by his thoughts of ruin and misfortune. The frowning faces of his 3 daughters, and the sobs of his wife as police questioned him about not only soliciting a prostitute, but murder. If things escalated, Chambers could easily escape back to his cradle of luxury in England, but Archibald would have to contend with an irreparable fall from grace, regardless of the result. He wondered to himself again, could he really do this? Was he willing to risk everything for some stranger? Please, Mr. Grant, Marcia pleaded. I know you can help us. Of course, Archibald replied, his heart sinking. I'll take a copy of the letter to the governor for you. Oh, thank you, she cried. You're a good man, Mr. Grant. Stanmitz sighed. All I know is that tomorrow, I'm going to take my little daughter and go stay by my mother in Kingston till things calm down. Out here's too crazy. Good idea, Archibald added. We all have to look out for ourselves and our own, don't we? Archibald met Sterling by the roadside and climbed into the car, soaking wet. Sterling already had a cigarette hissing smoke from between his teeth. This is the wettest dry season I've ever seen, he mused. One of your eyes is really red, brother. Bloodshot. What happened? Nothing. I need a drink, Archibald said gruffly, massaging his temples. Sterling turned down a small dirt road, reached into his jacket pocket, and pulled out a flask. Be my guest. Archibald took it, gulping down several mouthfuls before coughing. Thanks. This place makes me sick. Well, the camp is close by now. Mr. Chambers and the others are already done setting up, 2 miles south of here. Did you have any other business? Still need to go to the police station? He asked airily. Archibald adjusted his shirt collar. No. Chapter 8. After Sterling parked the car behind some bushes, the men set off on foot towards the new camp. The rain tapered, and they arrived as darkness cobbled itself together through the gray and orange sky. Entering, Archibald saw Chambers, Dunkley, and Auclair in a tent, huddled around a small table and playing cards. Chambers' bland face lit up. "Aha! You're back," he exclaimed. "Please have a seat. Auclair, bring Mr. Grant his supper." Archibald sat down, his face tight with displeasure. A bowl of stew and a cup of water were placed on the table before him. "No, thank you. I don't feel well enough to eat," Archibald said. Chambers frowned. "Are you unwell?" "No, He downed a cup of water. "Rough day, I understand," Chambers remarked, pouring Archibald more water from a canteen. "Gentlemen, please excuse us a moment." After the men dispersed, he drew his chair nearer to Archibald. "What's on your mind, Mr. Grant? Is something troubling you?" Archibald opened his mouth, but no words came. He took a sip of water and then cleared his throat. The villagers were panic-stricken after word spread that the body of a murdered woman was found in the Rio today, throat slashed. "Oh, it was that woman you brought here last night, Sarah. I thought she'd made it home. And then what happened?" Chambers' smug tone grated against Archibald's nerves. He had asked the question as though he were some carefree child being read a bedtime story. The body washed away to where none could see, and the people dismissed the incident as a rumor and went about their business. Chambers looked him straight in the eyes, candlelight and shadows raking across his face. And the police, what did they say? "What police?" The Englishman smirked. "Never mind. At any rate, I have some good news. It seems likely that tonight will be the last hunt. We've set several underwater traps while journeying here, and if Dunkley's estimations are correct, which they usually are, we've successfully flushed the creature to this location." Archibald nodded once. Good news indeed. Chambers relaxed into his seat, face beaming with satisfaction. "Thank you for the information, Mr. Grant." Archibald sat alone in his tent, pretending to read one of the books he'd brought, guilt crackling his conscience like a creeping flame. Chambers, Dunkley, and Sterling had set off down the embankment hours ago, and Auclair sat by the fire, sharpening a set of large knives and humming to himself. A bubbling pot filled the air with the rich scents of onions, pimento, and seafood. "Mr. Grant," he called, "will you starve in your tent all night, or come have some stew?" Archibald ran a hand down his face and muttered to himself, "Monsieur Grant, please don't let it go to waste." After some hesitation, Archibald joined Auclair by the fire, accepting the warm bowl of stew into his hands. He scooped a spoonful into his mouth. "You cook very well," Archibald said, staring at the floating chunks of crawfish and potatoes. "Thank you. Before and after the Great War, I worked in some of the top restaurants in France and all over the world. La Tour d'Argent, Le Train Bleu, Rector's in New York until it closed." "You were in the war?" "Of course. I had to go back home and defend my country. Me and Chambers were both at the Somme." Auclair went silent, and his expression hardened. Archibald had read about the Battle of Somme. It was a human meat grinder. Bloated piles of corpses too decayed to tell apart. 1,000,000 bodies reduced to fragments in a sea of agony and violence. "I added a little Scotch bonnet pepper to the stew. What do you think?" Auclair continued, the blade of his knife shushing up and down the leather strop. "Delicious. Might go well with whatever giant fish Chambers has been obsessing over like Ishmael and Moby Dick." Auclair laughed. "Yes, I was thinking of stewing the fish as well. Chambers and I have an agreement. I get 50% of whatever we catch. So what brings you here? Business. You're discreet. Good. I know Sterling is here because he's worked with Chambers for a while. And Dunkley, Eau Claire snorted. He just wants to get paid and go home. The men sat around the fire, chatting until silence parted the conversation, and Archibald buried his gaze in the flames. Eau Claire suddenly jumped up, rattling with excitement. "Did you hear that?" he cried. "Hear what?" "I think they're coming back. Oh, please, please, this time. This time." Archibald stood and listened closely. He could hear footsteps crunching through the tall bushes and the men hollering, drawing nearer. A woman's raspy, desperate scream shattered the night air, sounding as if her vocal cords were torn beyond repair. The men emerged from the darkness, Chambers and Sterling dragging a big net behind them with some writhing creature, shrieking and gasping hoarsely. Dunkley followed, taking slow, careful steps, several paces behind. Archibald squinted. Did he just see an arm rip through the net? Chambers and Sterling flung the net by the flames, and Archibald went numb with shock. A naked woman laid on her side, covered in seaweed, with the torso of a fish. Long black hair flowed down her shoulders, and her slimy greenish-bronze skin shimmering in the lantern light. She had bulging orange eyes and 4 arms. One reached through the hole in the net, revealing a webbed hand with bony fingers. A smaller, child-sized pair sprung from her hips, fists clenched like those of a newborn child. "Good Lord! A mermaid!" Archibald cried. Chambers smiled at him as Sterling and Eau Claire laughed and danced in the background, hooting with excitement. "It's what we've been hunting, Mr. Grant. The rarest thing of all. The unknown," Chambers said. "But if it's knowable now, then everything is." He extended an arm. "Eau Claire, the machete." "Oui, monsieur." Archibald's jaw dropped, and dread gnawed at his insides. "Wait! Don't kill it!" Chambers' smile collapsed into a malicious frown. "You don't give the orders around here." Eau Claire slammed the weapon into Chambers' open palm, and the man kicked the wailing creature onto its back. "Sterling, Dunkley, Eau Claire, hold her down." "Yes, sir," Eau Claire replied. "But where did Dunkley go? He was just here." Sterling grimaced. "No, you can't kill it now. You promised me that I could have the golden table when it resurfaces again at noontime. That we'd leash her, and I'd follow. If you kill her, she can't take me to where the table is." "Don't be such an uppity ape," Chambers barked. "You'd have sunk anyway if you'd grabbed onto the thing." "Shut up," Sterling bellowed, his face searing dark red. "I want my gold. You're not killing anything. We had a Chambers pulled a pistol from his hip and shot Sterling in the chest. Archibald was as shocked by the gunshot as he was by how coldly the Englishman had ended the poor man's life. His heart galloped in his ears, and he felt as though the entire camp had been frozen in time. Only the smoke from Chambers' pistol moved, twirling in pirouettes. With a stone face, the Englishman stood over Sterling's body and shot him between the eyes. "Eau Claire, move," Chambers ordered, tucking the gun away. The Frenchman pressed his weight onto the creature's flopping tail, and Archibald scanned the camp for Dunkley, still nowhere to be found. Chambers rose the machete above his head and plunged it into the mermaid's neck. A sharp gasp escaped its lips. He twisted the blade, and the mermaid went limp as blood pooled beneath his boots, and a satisfied grin split his lips. The man wiped blood and sweat from his face with the back of his arm, then breathed a long sigh. Beautiful, isn't she? The head is mine. I'll finish taking it off. Au clair. Prepare the rest immediately. Pickle the remains. Archibald froze, his body cold as a tomb. Oh God, you're going to eat her. Shut your bloody mouth if you want to live, Chambers growled. Some well-to-do half-breed, puttering around in a square world, enchanted by its banality like so many others. The Englishman whipped the machete downwards, splattering blood across the grass and Archibald's shoes. The rarest wonder in the world now lays at our feet. Immortality, dominion over all water, unfathomable power. You know nothing. This will take me some time to gut, Au clair said, cutting the net apart with a knife. He ran the blade across the mermaid's torso. Coin-sized rainbow-colored scales sprang off its tail and into the dirt. But scaling seems average. Excellent, Chambers replied. He turned to a cowering Archibald, sweat pouring down his face like monsoon rains. Then, aimed the gun at him. Hands behind your back and on your knees. Shaking, Archibald slowly knelt down and held his hands behind him, feeling harsh straw tightly wrapping around his wrists, the fibers digging into his skin. A sudden blow crashed into his back and knocked him to the ground. He watched as Chambers stepped over Sterling, returned to the mermaid, and tore the machete from its throat. Archibald closed his eyes, sickened by the sounds of snapping of cartilage and bone, and the wet hush of tearing flesh amplified his fear. He hung his head low as the smell of blood and crawfish stew mingled in the air. Chapter 9. Golden sunlight threaded across the horizon. Sterling's corpse hosted a party of flies. Archibald remained bound in the middle of the camp, his mouth and throat dry. Au clair had set up a wooden table and 2 chairs in front of him before scuttling off somewhere with Chambers, a bottle of rum in hand. The pair disappeared behind Sterling's old tent, and while Archibald couldn't see them, he could hear them laughing. Something smelled like roasted pork, with a fishy undertone. The cook returned, singing a merry French melody as he dragged Sterling's corpse by the ankles into Archibald's tent, then stood by the table in the middle of the camp. Chambers appeared and sat without even a glance. Au clair placed a few small pots on the table and elegantly removed their lids one by one, as if unveiling the latest in fine dining cuisine. Monsieur Chambers, thank you for the opportunity to cook for you, he said with a bow. As you know, exotic meats are my specialty, and this experience is priceless. Chambers draped a serviette on his lap. Wonderful. What have you prepared? A pleasing array of dishes, with some improvisation using local produce. Archibald's stomach churned nauseously as Au clair continued. We have sirène au preneux, roasted sirène with prunes doused in wine, with shallots, thyme, rosemary, and potatoes, very hearty. Also pan-seared sirène steaks, and sirène tenderloin with apples. And dessert. Au clair chuckled. Mangoes. All of it looks and smells amazing. Let's tuck in. Bon appetit. Au clair politely served dishes onto plates and into bowls, and Chambers spread a napkin across his lap. He cut a portion of the steak, popped it into his mouth, and closed his eyes, his face crinkling with pleasure as he hummed. Delicious, he cried. The taste and texture are interesting. A strong pork flavor with a mild mackerel-like saltiness, and the texture of a tuna steak. Au clair took a seat across from him. Merci, my friend. While the men ate, Archibald's mind raced. How was he going to escape? And if he could, Where would he go without a car, and in the middle of nowhere? Chambers held his hand over his glass of water, inhaling and exhaling in a slow rhythm. The glass trembled and the water spiraled, forming a miniature whirlpool at its center. It jetted at Auclair, spraying him in the face, and the glass exploded into twinkling shards. Auclair sputtered, and Chambers cackled. "This is the best day of my life," he exclaimed. "And this is only the beginning. Imagine what powers I'll have after several more meals." "And imagine if we get to eat more of those creatures," Auclair added. "But I wonder, why did this one have 4 arms? The one we almost caught last year only had 2 arms and a big ugly scar on one of them. What does it matter? We caught one. They probably come in all sorts of sizes and varieties like any other fish. I only care about the effects." The men continued to eat, cutlery clinging, their gestures frantic with excitement. Auclair ran off over and over again, refilling the pots as they emptied. Under the table, Archibald could see Chambers reach into his pocket and gently remove a pistol and aim it at Auclair's stomach. Auclair unknowingly mirrored the gesture with a gun of his own. "Back to England tomorrow, I suppose," Chambers mused, sliding a chunk of meat into his mouth. "What do you plan to do when we return?" The Frenchman chuckled. "Cook." Chambers smirked. "Gun!" Archibald shouted. The cook leapt away from the table, and Chambers fired once, missing him. Auclair shot next, hitting Chambers in the face and chest, and the man's body fell to the ground. The Frenchman froze for a moment, his breathing fast and staccato. He glanced at Archibald, then sprinted into his own tent and back out with a duffel bag, then took off into the forest. Archibald steadied himself onto his feet, cold sweat pouring down his back and forehead. He looked into Chambers' blank eyes, blood flowing freely as the Rio. The man blinked. Archibald's heart galloped in his chest. He turned and ran, but quickly lost his balance and slammed onto his chest. "That's why the police tie your hands behind your back," Chambers mused, towering over him. "It disrupts one's balance. Speaking of the police, I think we should pay them a visit." You're alive," Archibald stammered. "And thriving," Chambers hissed with a grin. He wiped a hand across his forehead and the wound disappeared, only leaving a smear of pink behind. "Mr. Grant, all sorts of madness has taken place here. You've interacted substantially with the villagers, calming them, helping them make sense of the drownings. But it was all a farce to divert attention from your own depravity." "What? No! You're an animal and a murderer." "I'm the animal," Chambers laughed. "Look at us. Who are they more likely to believe, me or you?" Facing certain death, fear and shame gripped Archibald's heart. Woefully misled by his own gullibility, his wife and children would be left alone, and everything he worked for would be gone. Chambers dragged Archibald onto his feet and pressed his pistol into Archibald's side. "At any rate, I do thank you for your services, my friend. Your information was invaluable." "What information?" Archibald asked. "The sacrifice mentioned by the villagers and so-called witch girl," Chambers replied coolly. "I already knew that the death of women could provoke the creature to surface. But thanks to you, I learned there was a ritual to manipulate. As you can see, slitting that horse's throat and breaking a cow's neck proved successful. If only I'd known sooner. I would already be a god, and some simpleton country dwellers might still be alive today." Archibald felt like vomiting, as Chambers' words bored holes of grief into his heart. "You son of a bitch!" Chambers clicked his tongue. "Actually, I am God. consider your delivery to the police my first act of mercy. You're insane. Huh. We've already agreed that you're the only madman here. He shoved Archibald up the dirt road leading to the car, ramming the gun into his back every so often, whistling as they walked through a light mist. Chambers coughed, cleared his throat, and continued. The man suddenly broke into fits of coughing and choking, his face turning red. Archibald watched in horror as streams of water poured from the man's eyes, nose, and mouth, and blood bubbled from his lips. He fell to his knees, vomiting violently as scaly loose skin sloughed down his arms and face like a snake's empty husk. Chambers gurgling desperately as his raw muscles glistened in the sun. Blood misted into the air from the man's neck as jagged gills flapped at its sides. A swollen, purple tongue slid over Chambers' lips as green slime flowed from his jaw. He begged. Chambers fought and struggled on the ground, clawing at his gills and gagging. The skin from his forehead melted wax-like over his mouth, muffling his screams. Terrified blue eyes peered from behind a veil of white skin, and Archibald went numb with terror. More skin peeled away, followed by fat and muscle, until only a skeleton remained, emerging from its jacket of flesh, adorned with carnage. Archibald hollered and stumbled away as quickly as he could. His wrists burned from the rope, and the humid air starved him of oxygen as he hurried through the brush towards the main road. He stumbled past Auclair, who had met a similar fate. A melted, featureless blob of a corpse that reeked of dead fish, its ribcage split open like a lotus flower. A skeletal hand still clung to the duffel bag, its zipper half open. Long black hair flowed out, and a webbed hand lay in the grass. Something larger inside reflected a rainbow color, but Archibald kept moving. Finally arriving at the roadside, he collapsed. Chapter 10. 1 month later. Archibald sat in his study at home, jazz music popping from the record player, and a pipe in his mouth while he penned a postcard to Stanmitz, thanking him for his help after he'd lost consciousness. The man had found him while on his way to Kingston, jammed into a beat-up car with several other people and his little daughter. He tried returning to work as usual, but paranoia clung to his mind like a waking nightmare. Archibald's chest tightened whenever the phone rang, and every knock at the door shattered his composure like cannon fire through glass. His body trembled whenever he thought of leaving his home, to the point he couldn't attempt it, so he closed his office. After 2 weeks had passed with no authorities at his doorstep, and no word in the newspapers, he realized that Chambers' demand for discretion had betrayed him. Archibald sold his business, choosing instead to enjoy the simpler things in life: quality time with family and friends, afternoon naps, and long walks on the beach with his wife. As he tapped a foot in rhythm with the bouncing double bass, his maid, Cindy, approached the doorframe. Archibald noticed that her usual radiant smile had dulled to a warm glow. "Bath's ready, Mr. Grant," she chimed, drops of sweat snaking down her face. "Thank you. Are you all right? You seem more worn out than usual, and it's only the middle of the day." "I'm fine, Mr. Grant," she said, huffing slightly. "It's just that someone has been repeatedly knocking on the front door for the past hour, and every time I've gone to open it, no one was there. It was tiring going back and forth because I still had the oxtail in the oven." Not expecting any visitors today," Archibald said, scratching his head. Paranoia creeped through his thoughts like a maggot on rotting meat, but he quickly composed himself. "It's probably some children playing mischievous games." Cindy slouched and fanned herself with a hand. "Maybe. I did hear some girls giggling in the yard earlier while I hung the laundry. Don't worry about the door. I'll ask Mr. Gray to watch the gate after my bath. Just let one of the dogs out for now. Yes, sir. And there's something hanging from the corner of your left eye. Is there? Archibald ran a finger across his eye, feeling a silky, phlegm-like thickness. He looked down to see a gob of green mucus, rank as rotting fish, just as he experienced while at the Rio. Goosebumps pressed through his skin. Cindy crinkled her nose. It's nothing, he reassured. My eyes were a bit sensitive to the countryside environment. It'll clear up in due time. Good, I'm relieved. I was worried you might be like my brother. He lives in the countryside in England and writes regularly about the new allergies he has now. Says he feels like he's cursed. Archibald let out a tentative laugh. Curses aren't real, but allergies certainly are. After Cindy left, he made his way to the bathroom and eased himself into the tub, humming. He leaned back in the tepid water and closed his eyes. The sound of water gently flowing caught his ear, and Archibald sat upright. None of the taps were on. A pool of water was flowing into the room from beneath the door. Cindy, there's something leaking in the hall, he called. No reply. The water swept over the solitary bath mat, past the toilet, and around the feet of the tub. Cindy, he called again, before realizing she was likely still outside with the dog. Archibald leapt from the tub and hurried to the door, twisting and pulling at the stubborn knob. His heart raced. The door could only be locked from the inside. Adrenaline pumping, he beat his fist against the door and hollered as though he were surrounded by wolves. He grabbed several towels and hastily stuffed them beneath the door, but the water rushed through like hot blood in veins. This is impossible. Oh God, what's happening? Archibald turned to the solitary window by the toilet, clawing and pulling at its flimsy latch that had suddenly become hard as cement. The slow creeping of the water transformed into a rushing stream that rose above his ankle in seconds. He wrapped a towel around the fist, then hurried towards the window, but slipped. He landed on his stomach, the side of his head crashing against the tile, and a bloody tooth flew from his mouth. Archibald groaned, his head and jaw throbbing with pain, his vision fading in and out of focus. A giggle came from the tub. Archibald looked up to see Catherine, half her face peeking from over the edge of the tub, her skin slimy and iridescent like the scales of a fish. What do you want from me?" he whimpered. "I'm sorry." Slowly, Catherine rose a webbed hand and pointed at the door. Cold air filled the room. "Do you know her?" Catherine asked, her voice cool as mountain winds. Up from the water emerged Sarah, her naked, bloated body covered in seaweed, head bobbling to one side as water poured from her slashed neck. Another woman rose from the water, her lips blue and purple, water slugs oozing from her mouth. A third corpse appeared, in a state of ghastly decay, its face a tumorous mass, arms bound with rope. More and more dead women came into view, their feet sloshing through the water as they surrounded Archibald and held him down, the walls echoing with whispers. "You kept silent for that monster who took her life, didn't you?" Catherine hissed. "I know all the women this world throws away. So do my sisters. But Mama knows them best. Now, you'll know them too." A ragged scream erupted from Archibald's throat, quickly silenced by the rising water. His mind replayed memories of his wife and daughters, regret shattering his conscience. Before everything went black, he heard Catherine's voice whisper into his ear, clear and sweet as a songbird's melody.
No mercy.
What did you think of this terrific horror story? Comment or email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to WH Vigo for sharing this. You can follow her on Instagram and Threads at WH Vigo, and you can keep up with her at whvigo.com. As we turn down the lights on this episode, make plans to join me next time. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.